keep getting that cut wrong. Anyway, welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. My name is JJCouey. I come to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is Gigaohm Biological, a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biologist. At this show, we try to stay focused on the biology. We don't take the bait on social media, and we love our neighbors. We know who they are, and we talk to them regularly. This show is a continuation of yesterday's show. I Am Katniss was first in the chat. It is part 2. I will pick up kind of where we left off with the guess who, what, and when kind of thing with a different video or a different audio, excuse me. And then I'll finally get to Ian Carroll admitting it and what he exactly admits. And then clean up in aisle 4. Clean up in aisle 4 is something I don't know if we're going to get completely through. We might just get to the beginning of it. It's gut-wrenching, it's unbelievable, but it's also very revealing because it shows you what's really going on here. It shouldn't be underestimated. We're in big trouble. There's no other way to say it. We've been walked into a trap. The trap is closing. And I think this show is going to be even better than yesterday's show. So thank you very much for being here again. And I hope I will see you in a few minutes if this all works out well. I'm still trying to get the hang of using the GoPro up there as this alternate camera. It's this alternate camera right here, which is actually really fun, but it's added a little dimension of things that I'm not really totally down with. And so sometimes it just is not quite right. Anyway, I'll get there. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Just got to learn my buttons again. I just have a couple buttons that I'm now using that I wasn't taking advantage of before. And I actually have a couple more possibilities there that I could build in as I work through this. So thank you very much for your patience. And I'll see you again probably in a few minutes. It's been real fun. I'm really having a good time now that I have a more positive message for you and for myself every day. I have hope again.
I think truth is good for kids. We're so busy lying, we don't even recognize the truth no more in society. We want everybody to feel good. That's not the way life is.
It is definitely Code Brown. It's Code Corey and Kirsch is what it is in aisle 4. Clean up in aisle 4, indeed.
But you can tell if someone's lying. You can sort of feel it in people. And I have lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie, and I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's really important not to be a liar.
Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. With Tylenol, don't take it. Don't take it. Don't use Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. Fight like hell not to take it. I think you shouldn't take it. Don't take Tylenol. The baby gets a shot. They say, here, take a drop of Tylenol. I've heard that for years. Take Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. Don't have your baby take Tylenol. Don't give Tylenol to the baby. Don't give Tylenol to the baby. Don't give your baby Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. Don't take it. So that's it. There's nothing much to say. Don't take Tylenol. Just don't take it. And I just say it again. Don't take Tylenol.
Thirsty or hungry, free food, free water. Not free for never spent. Free food, free water. Does anyone want free food or water away from
There must be a Bernie supporter somewhere.
Socialism right there, buddy. Free water.
Someone else paid for
He's donating it on his own.
Someone else paid for that water bottle.
He did voluntarily, so.
I'm just fucking with you,
Government
bro.
sucks. There's no no free lunch. There's no free lunch. Economics 101.
What's your corporation, right? It's a nonprofit called Turning Point USA.
Gun Save Lives. No free lunch. There's no free lunch.
So can I ask one of you fellas, what is your ideal situation then for
The
government?
Constitution, more freedom. We're far from it now. Let's get back to restoration of individual liberty, states' rights. More like Texas, less like California.
So you have more of a libertarian viewpoint?
Libertarian, conservative,
Free markets, whatever you
freedom.
want to call it.
Be in control of your own life and your own destiny. I don't want Washington, D.C. to tell me how to live my life.
All right, so can I ask you though,
Tell the
like,
government to get out of
what would you
our
recommend, say,
lives.
for like, environmental issues where like
Property rights.
a corporation would
Property rights.
would
If it's
pollute a
public
river?
land, they're free to protect it.
Yeah, I think states care more about their public rivers than a Washington, D.C. bureaucrat. I think the Montana State Wildlife Service will take care of their glacier parks a lot better than Washington, D.C. ever could. I think states' rights matter, and I think Washington, D.C. is full of corruption, bureaucrats, waste, inefficiency. And look, I think states created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. And the beauty of individual liberty is if you decentralize the federal government, you can restore freedom back to the people, not have government rule our lives every day.
Now that sounds very similar to Gary Johnson's platform.
Similar. It sounds similar to the Constitution too.
Do you mind if I ask you, who you might be supporting for this election?
Yeah, I will. It's a binary choice. I think we got to save the Supreme Court. I personally, not the organization, I'll be voting for Donald Trump.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Socialism sucks. Socialism sucks. Socialism sucks. Socialism sucks.
All right, big government sucks. Big government sucks. Big government sucks. Big government sucks.
Big government.
these really wealthy, high-profile people. And, Eric Weinstein was highlighting this to me once. He was saying...
Smart dude. I like
very
him.
smart dude.
Yeah.
And he wasn't making any accusations at all, but he was just talking overall. He goes, I think there are people out there that can facilitate experiences for discrete clients. And it's very valuable. Yeah. Like, look at the guy who gave Epstein that house in Manhattan. He gave him...
You mean
the
Leslie
guy
Wexner?
Yeah, the guy from Victoria's Secret.
Dude.
He gave him a $60 million mansion.
He did way more than that. He
You're
signed
so
his entire
cool.
power of attorney to him.
You're so cool. I'm going to give you a house.
No, he gave him the keys to the entire castle of all of Victoria's Secret and Abercrombie & Fitch and all of L Brands.
When you find out that people who work at Nickelodeon are pedophiles, you go,
foot fetishists, no less.
Right, if you're going to be a pedophile, wouldn't you go be around kids? Like, if you could be and sneak around? Okay, wouldn't you think that Sacha Baron Cohen thought he had exposed pedophile ring while filming Who's America? Oh, that's right.
Sorry?
That's right. I forgot about that.
The concierge said
they could do something.
We can help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, things happen out at, it's kind of crazy. Do you remember Andrew Breitbart got killed?
I do remember.
And he was exposing
a heart attack.
Exactly. He was exposing Acorn because oh man, I'm totally blanking on our boy these days that does all the
O'Keefe?
James
O'Keefe,
You know that James O'Keefe got to start with Breitbart on that story exposing Acorn, and what they did is they sent James O'Keefe and this other female reporter into Acorn.
And O'Keefe pretended to be a pimp.
They asked them for help setting up a underage sex trafficking ring, and the people at Acorn.
I didn't know it was underage.
Yeah, that was they wanted help setting up an underage sex trafficking ring using children from Guatemala or from Central America.
Did they say that in the meeting?
That's what was on tape.
What?
Yeah, it blew my mind when I read it. I was like, what are we talking about right now? Because I didn't know that history because I wasn't paying attention back then. And that is the story, is that he went in and asked for help setting up I don't think he was probably using the words like 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds. I assume that he was like implying like 16-year-olds, but I don't know. But that's the story.
How did he phrase it?
I don't know. It's not. I can't find those videos anymore. I've looked.
Really?
I'm sure they're somewhere. I'm sure that James O'Keefe could tell the story.
What happened with him in Project Veritas?
I don't know. I have no idea. And it's a whole drama fest. And I try to stay. I usually try to stay out of the drama in the modern industry because it's like it'll just waste time.
Conspiracy drama. There's drama inside the drama industry.
There's drama in every industry, dude.
There's drama in the drama class.
But yeah, he went in and asked for help setting up this ring. And they allegedly said, yeah, here's how you do it. We'll help you. And that's what the case they brought against Acorn was.
Right.
Before Andrew Breitbart mysteriously died, and then the coroner that did his autopsy mysteriously died. It's like that was such a weird one to stumble upon because I didn't know I was about to stumble upon it. And people can look. Everyone should look up anything that I say. People should always just look it up and just start typing things in that I'm saying and see if you can figure out what you think. Because I am not an expert. I'm just a dude that is looking things up, and I try to be really thorough. But was it Breitbart or Drudge that was the first victim of these coordinated anti-advertising campaigns? I'm not sure I know what you mean by that. Where advertisers all pull out to try to tank you, like
exactly.
I don't know.
They do it strategically.
I think it was done to both, probably, but I don't know.
But I think the first one that they did it on, I think it was Breitbart. I think Breitbart was on this like super rapid upward trajectory, and they just completely tanked the revenue. Was it Breitbart or was it? Do you remember, Jamie? Who was talking to us about that? Was it Chase Hughes? Who was it? It might have been.
It is interesting how you can watch out over history. The more history you learn, the more you get to see where certain strategies, like kind of like deep state strategies, so to speak, or intelligence agency strategies, get invented, and then they start using them.
Might have been Mike Benz.
That would be a Mike Benz thing to say for sure.
Sounds
Yeah,
like Mike
Benz. He knows the shit. Yeah, he knows a lot of shit.
Okay, Breitbart Plus lost 90% of its advertisers in 2 months. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Who's still there? So this is the Washington Post making it seem like this is a normal thing.
Yeah.
Oh, look, they lost all their
Media
advertisers.
frame
People
jobs.
pulled out because they're full of shit.
It's just another frame game.
No, they all coordinated to try to boycott them and kill them.
It's so crazy to bring all of these tactics exposed in plain view.
Ladies and gentlemen, you probably couldn't hear that because that was on 2X, but I assure you, they all but admitted it. They were talking about Andrew Breitbart and his murder. They were talking about the start that Veritas had with Breitbart, and they weren't talking about any of these points, including perhaps the most pertinent one right now, autism being a myth. The fact of the matter is, autism is an illusion that has been created by an illusion of consensus of people on the internet, and it's our use of social media that allows this to work, where a useless argument has been actively engaged in, a limited spectrum of debate for a decade, maybe 3. And if you don't believe that they can do that to you, just think about how many of these pictures are familiar to you in a flash and why that is. It is because the internet is that powerful and it is that ubiquitous in our lives, and we are very visually learning animals. And so it is very dangerous for us to allow our reality to be defined by such a tiny window of glass. If you don't understand why the cheese is free behind that little window of glass, you are a mouse in that trap. And it is about the human genome. It is about a science experiment that involves your grandchildren. And it is one big cast. It is a national security theater, so you can't change the script. Although they are on social media and pretend that you might have that possibility, it is definitely not true. But we could, in theory, make America real again. We could do that, but I think the only way that's possible is if we start supporting people like me, people who have a message that is unique, produced by themselves, by their own professional and personal experience, and years of trying to get to the truth with an unblemished record of integrity. That's what I think Gigaohm Biological brings to the table that very few others do. And it's evident in the kind of information that I try to present within the first 10 minutes of the start of the stream. It could, I guess, start with it. But let's just be honest here. Nobody says it better than this. Autism spectrum disorder is a myth. And it's a myth that's specifically used to make sure that intramuscular injection is never questioned as a methodology, that virology is never questioned as a science, and that public health is never questioned as a reason. And if any of these people were real, they would have gotten here by now. Just like getting to the point where you could say that pandemics and gain of function are also biological myths that are used to make sure that these things aren't questioned. But they didn't get there. And the only reason why they didn't get there at this point, the only one that makes the most sense, is it's by design. And that's why they ignore the biology that I've been trying to extremely thoroughly explore over the last 6 years, the possibility space I've been trying to explore. They ignore it on purpose. They have to. And it's important to understand that this truth involves my little tiny personal experience with these monkey people. They were at my house. They've been texting my wife. It's a very personal thing for me that takes a lot of effort and concentration not to be constantly aggravating and constantly about me, but it's really not about me. It's about us. It's about our children. And our children being trapped on social media because we are trapped on social media. We were actually trapped on TV, let's be honest. Us older people over 50 years old, we grew up in a time when you still had to stand up to change TV channels, and there were only 3. I remember watching Channel 13 a lot in northern Wisconsin. NBC was Channel 13. If you don't understand why the cheese is free on social media, then you're trapped in it already. But I assure you that social media is the military weapon we need to fear. It's not the COVID shot. It's not the COVID virus. It's not a COVID virus or another virus to come. It is actually social media and our acquiescence to it. And as Americans, we need to stay razor focused on this idea. We need to stay razor focused on this idea because all of our politics and all of our discussions about geopolitics are supposedly taking place on social media, and damage is being done to our geopolitical relationship because of our use of social media, and this is preposterous. What this is actually is a theater that is designed to make social media relevant where it otherwise wouldn't be. In other words, it is part of an orchestrated, paid campaign to get everybody in the free cell phone handling world to be on social media and to try to use social media skillfully to find the truth. And using social media to skillfully find the truth has resulted in Children's Health Defense, ICANN, the Brownstone Institute, HART, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump and all of these people. And the reason why I know is because I've interacted with most of them personally, with texting and with, as I said, even my wife has had texts and emails from these super clowns. And they're not, I like to say clowns, but you know, I'm using that in the kind of scary, terrifying Stephen King kind of clown, because that's what they really are. They're imposters. They're imposters dressed up as, friendly, cuddly, homesteading farmers. And, really friendly, cuddly dermatologists from Idaho. Or really friendly, cuddly, intensive care internists from Wisconsin. It's a dark place where we are, ladies and gentlemen, where RNA cannot pandemic intramuscular injection is dumb, transfection is a crime, and populations pyramids are real and motivating most of what we experienced over the COVID pandemic. Now, there is one way out, at least right now, there's at least one way out, and that is to build your own social media, which is what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to set an example with. It is a daunting task that I can only complete because I have a friend, and that friend helps me do it. But essentially what we have is a website that runs a video hosting platform called PeerTube that also actually has an app that you can download. The reason why this is cool is because the app and the website don't even want to. It's not even possible to log in, to create a login. You couldn't give me your email if you wanted to. And in fact, it does use your IP address, but it's only because of the way that the sharing service works. You kind of hold pieces of the video and pass them along to other people. And so it's an interesting open source thing. If you're interested in it, you can go to GitHub and other places and find the code for it. I do not know if Google puts something on it before you download it from Google Play. So, use at your own risk, of course, but all the reports that I've had, except for from people with older phones, is that this app works flawlessly. And so the live show will be up there if it's live, and otherwise the last video that was posted will be the first thing that hits your phone. And that could even be Mark Kulak's stream, which is actually kind of cool right now. I did see a comment there that I will address a little later from Entropy Rider. But I'm going to first get the show started here. Let me just pop myself in. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. It's 12:34 here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're still trying to seek the truth together about what happened with the pandemic and what motivated these people to lie about so much. I'm very excited that I do think we're finally breaking through after 6 years of work. We're starting to build a sort of an understanding that isn't wavering anymore about what happened and what wool was pulled over whose eyes, and who might still have wool pulled over their eyes versus who has accepted their role in this theater and is now actively participating in the bamboozling of our children, which I don't like at all. And so the bamboozlement is primarily about, the existence of elite pedophiles and how blackmail and guns and drugs, I guess, are used to control governments of the world. And it's kind of preposterous in a way how they talk about this, but that's the reason why apparently Trump needs supporting, because he is despite this amazing world level of control the elite pedophiles have, Trump was able to get elected twice, non-consecutive terms, and he's trying to upset this apple cart, and so we are supposed to support him because he's not an elite pedophile. He's fighting against them. But of course, Trump thinks that COVID was real and that warp speed was fantastic and that vaccines can and do work. It's just that Tylenol is bad. And on the other side, we have people who are also sure that this is about the grandchildren of Earth, but I guess Trump is an elite pedophile that's trying to steal them, and COVID is real, and vaccines work, and humans are a plague on the Earth that we should probably reduce population anyway. So, I mean, with climate change coming, we might go extinct irrespective of what we do. And of course, none of this is true. This is all based on bad biology. It's all based on bad biology, and that bad biology needs to be unlearned. And so let me get this music away. I hope that wasn't too annoying. I could hardly hear it in my ear. I had to turn up my monitors a little bit. We got to get rid of this bad biology. That's what I've been, threatening to do for quite some time. And I got to say the developing of that tact has been more difficult and more daunting than I guess I estimated. I mean, I'm pretty far now behind the scenes, but it's been a lot of reading, and I still have a lot more reading to do. But I guess I kind of decided that I didn't want to do it half-assed, if you will. And so it's not as simple as just deciding that you're going to prove, modern biology and the central dogma is essentially being wrong, and then write some silly book about it that gets nowhere. I want to do or try to attempt to make a first attempt or a second attempt at doing, a third attempt at doing what Buckminster Fuller suggested, which is if you want to fix or change something about the way that we understand the world, the way to do it is to offer a new model that's better than the old one. And so I think I'm on my way to being able to do that, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. And the reason why I don't think it's a crazy thing to say is because I will be standing on the shoulders of other giants, just not the ones that the central dogma stands on, not the ones that we are supposed to pay attention to. And I think that's really the exciting part of what I get to do here, thanks to my supporters like Maurice and Simon and William and Jeff, and all these people are without a doubt seminal in making this possible, making me believe that I can spend 15 hours a day on this. And I'm not talking like Sherry Tenpenny. I'm talking like Jonathan Couey, who's I feel like I've gone from losing my mind to finding it again, and I'm very excited to share that with you over the next couple months. It remains about the grandchildren of Earth. There remains a global fake health freedom movement that we can dispel one language at a time, and that's what makes Gaza and Israel so ridiculous. That's what makes Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy and Mark Zuckerberg and Alex and Peter and Jeff. It makes them all silly. Makes them all silly. Elon is one of the biggest jokes ever played on modern humanity. But just his being known around the world is kind of demonstration to these people that are bamboozled by this idea that they're going to take control of the species or the evolution of the species in a decade or so. This illusion is largely sustained by a consensus of, scripted actors that probably more or less know that they're full of shit. And they don't mind because of the perks that it has, the roles that they play. I don't think it's that far away to cite someone like George Carlin to say that it's a big club and you're not in it. I don't think it's crazy to think that when you watch television, you're seeing some people who are not in the club and other people who are in the club, and the ones who are in the club might act a little more relaxed than the ones who are auditioning for the club. And there are some people who are on TV and have no idea because they haven't spent their lives trying to figure things out. They haven't really spent their lives trying to understand the world that they live in. They've just been, some people aren't that complicated. I think Leonardo da Vinci is the one who said that some people see when shown, and some people just can't see. And I think that's an apt description, and it's not to say that, this is a thing, but it's to say that this is the kind of motivation that results in a book like Man and His Future, where the people who can see start to believe that they have some responsibility to govern the people who can't see. And then once they realize that the people who see only when shown can be shown the wrong thing, then the people who see understand that there's an interesting way we could govern everybody then. Because we can just show them the wrong thing. We can show them what we want them to see. And of course, this is where we are, right? That's the reason why this show today might be the most impactful show that I do in many, many years, because the cage has been closed. It's all summarized on this screen right here. The cage is closed. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about is that there is a trap that we have been led into where we think that maybe some actors underneath the Donald Trump banner are actually good guys with good intentions that are going to try and change things in America for the better or something like that, but it's all a lie. And there are unwitting participants who can't see even when they're shown. And then there are witting participants who understand that dynamic and understand what's required to completely bamboozle those people who can't see unless they're shown. And that's why Mary Holland and Brian Hooker and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Meryl Nass and all the other people that I've ever come in contact with the last 5 years have broken off ties with me, and none of them will admit that I exist, because they exist inside of this narrative, behind these people and behind these movements, behind these Telegram groups, behind these, Instagram lives and whatever else that they're doing to make sure that nobody gets here. The exact same reason why they killed Tony Bark and why they killed Brandy Vaughn is because Tony Bark and Brandy Vaughn were able to say that intramuscular injection is just dumb. And injection versus ingestion is a great way to biologically rationalize how dumb injection is, especially intramuscular injection in the context of the immune system and how it's organized around barriers, epithelial barriers. And if you understand the history of injection around morphine and around the late 1800s with the invention of the hypodermic needle, and read some of the books that I have on my shelves about what they think about the hypodermic needle, why it's such a miracle invention, and why it allows so many new treatments for new and previously untreatable conditions. And listen to these doctors describe their anecdotal cases where their application of intramuscular injection of a combination of substances is able to cure something. It's very easy to see that intramuscular injection is the dumb idea. That's the problem. And the laziness with which immunization is done in America and around the world often just involves intramuscular injection because it's considered equivalent to subcutaneous injection, when in fact it may be several orders of magnitude more dangerous with a much more distributed temporally and phenotypically bouquet of possible outcomes, which can't be connected to the injection because of the nature of it. And so transfection, being an old technology from 20 years ago, already used in all medical science departments in America and in the Western world, are using transfection in mice and monkeys and other animals and in cell culture for decades already. So an old technology has been renamed or falsely called gene therapy, and it's all bullshit. And that's the reason why Kevin McKernan of the Human Genome Project and Robert Malone of DITRA and DOD and all these other things, the WHO and Solvay and whoever else he's worked for, that's why they were involved in this Steve Bannon conservative populist resistance movement to the COVID thing. That's why they were there, because the military part of this needed the alternative social media bubbles to have these people. And that's also why they had to go to all these podcasts, because the idea wasn't for them to share their message and then to, send it around via USB or have everybody post it on all these websites. They had to do personal appearances so that the magic of podcasts, dumb person talking to smart person, asking smart questions of the smart person that were scripted by the smart person. The dumb person comes to learn something from the smart person, and the person who's passively watching that conversation can be bamboozled to believe that they've also learned something. And that's very specifically why Robert Malone and Kevin McKernan and Jessica Rose and Pierre Corey and Peter McCullough and Mike Eden and Claire Craig and Nick Hudson and all these people exist, is because a social media network of actors was created, recruited, curated, scripted. Their scripts were changed, and they were promoted or given money for a set or, given Rumble contracts, yada, yada, yada. The list is endless. Fake subscribers on Locals, fake subscribers on Substack. There's all kinds of ways that money could be laundered here, and it is all because they needed to control the narrative. That's why Sherry Tenpenny and Meryl Nass and Robert Malone and all these people are on the same side that haven't been able to say this. Robert Malone, the preeminent homesteading genius, has not been able to summarize any of this biology at all and is still just stuck on the we need safe vaccines and this was a contaminated shot, just like the script says. And Children's Health Defense could have saved, potentially, I guess, hundreds of thousands of children from damage had they just been able to say it as succinctly as I've been saying it for the last 2 years instead of firing me. RNA cannot pandemic. Autism is a meaningless word by design. Think about that. Children's Health Defense, primarily defined as an anti-vax group who says that vaccines are responsible for autism, has never been able to get to the point where their scientific advisor, Brian Hooker, was when he was on the radio in 2013 saying that autism was not a word that he liked. He doesn't use the word autism. His son was vaccine damaged, neurologically damaged. It's because it's by design. It is a military script that Brian Hooker and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mary Holland are all a part of. It's time that we wake up. It's time that we accept that the conservative movement in America only exists on social media and mainstream media because they say it does, and it's by design. It is a trap that Judy Woodruff has laid down, that Steve Bannon has laid down, that the entire national security state has laid down, specifically to catch all of us in it. Even now, the Christian nationalist movement is an illusion that only is going to exist on social media, no matter how many groups of people they show you with guns and marching around. It is an illusion. Those people might believe it exists, but they only believe it exists because they are skillfully using social media. And if you need one more piece of evidence that these people are all frauds, think about how easy it is to say that a man who thinks he's a woman is not normal. The cosmetic transformation, regardless of specific details, results in a transitioned or trans man, not a trans woman. It's a trans man. Just like a man who dresses in drag is still just a man dressing in drag, a man who thinks he's a woman and decides to surgically alter himself in order to be more like what he perceives as a woman is a transitioning man, and that transitioning process never ends because it's trans man, done. Now there's no language confusion. Now there's no hearing in front of Congress where some Supreme Court nominee gets asked to define what a woman is, because we don't need that anymore, because the language is consistent. But of course, everything on this screen is a language thing. Intramuscular injection is a dumb idea from the late 1800s. Injection of a combination of substances with the intent of augmenting the immune system is dumb. Transfection is an old technology that would be a crime in healthy humans. RNA cannot pandemic. Autism is a meaningless word by design. I'm done. And because Children's Health Defense, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because all of these people, including Dr. Paul Thomas and anybody that you put on this list, Suzanne Humphreys, these are all really, really malevolent frauds. And they deserve to be hit with rotten vegetables in public for the rest of their lives. I don't think it'll happen, but it should happen a lot. If they wanted to have won, they could have won a long time ago. If they really believed what they believe, they could have won a long time ago. They would have been saying this a long time ago. They would have been doing things differently, and their priorities would remain solid. Mark said it best the other day, or said it really well the other day. I don't know if this is actually his phrase. I guess it's not, but all corruption is ultimately permitted or allowed or facilitated by the lack of good priorities, proper prioritization of problems, proper prioritization of what's important in a system or a network allows corruption to occur. And in this case, social media has been used as an elaborate theater to essentially bamboozle the American public and a lot of the public of the social media using citizens around the world, many of them in the EU. And this bamboozlement is an ongoing operation to make social media a more relevant governance tool than, say, newspapers or particular language. That's the whole trick here, is that if the ultimate, if the ultimate window into your governed population is social media, and you can get a lot of information from it, and they can demonstrate that as national security value to all of these countries, then behind the scenes, all of these countries are on board with this governance. And I think that's one of the things that I think we need to kind of assume, or put in the assume column of NATO countries, is that they've all accepted that social media is either going to be governance by the people that control social media, or we are going to have our own social media and control it. It's kind of like the Dune prophecy, where men turned over their decisions to machines, but then that only allowed them to be enslaved by other men with machines. And so if we turn ourselves over to social media, and that's the decision that the technocrats make because they need that data, because they want to be able to control us, control what we're thinking about, what we buy and what we do, and distract us with things, then they have also accepted the fact that if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it to us. And so they've created this whole illusion of TikTok and that being a Chinese thing, that now Larry Ellison is going to save us from, the guy with all the AI and with Oracle, he's going to save us because he's going to buy TikTok and make it free. Just like, I guess Elon Musk bought Twitter from the guy with the beard, and now it's X and it's free. And so you can see it. It's just a corralling of your our collective consciousness, and the creating of this noosphere that Pierre Desjardins came up with a long time ago, where the whole globe has kind of a collective awareness of what's going on right now. And Donald Trump represents something like that, because a large percentage of people on Earth are currently, more or less in the background or in the foreground thinking about the consequences of Donald Trump being in office in America. Wow, that's crazy. But this is all an orchestrated campaign to demonstrate the power of social media, demonstrate what they can do. And I think that if you think deep enough and dark enough and assume the worst, then a lot of what we've experienced over the last couple years should be seen and interpreted as a theater for the whole world. And so, would they fake a shooting for the whole world? Yes, they would. Hey, come on now. I have no responsibility for... Every once in a while, that thing, I might have to get a different one. It's kind of cheap. Maybe it's too cheap. I don't know. But yeah, I really think you got to start thinking of it this way, that no matter what you tweet, no matter what you post on Facebook, the Star Trek episode's not going to change. And so we've been trying to change the Star Trek episode with social media, not understanding that all these people are actors, and they know that. These people are scripted actors, from Joe Rogan all the way down to Brett Weinstein, from, Jimmy Kimmel all the way down to the no virus people. And so what you need to think about, what I tried to show you yesterday, is what could a couple, 3 really close friends, 30-year friends, maybe they all worked at the same comedy club, maybe they all, I don't know, had the same boyfriend, or worked for the same movie producer, or all like the same. Imagine what people who were lifelong friends in show business could do together if they just shook hands and split up and said, let's do the most damage, let's herd the most cats, let's see who can get the most viewers. Ready, break. Because that's why I showed the barbecue thing, because it's beautiful what 3 friends can accomplish. I mean, they work hard at that place. Every day, all week long, hard at that place. And I don't think it's possible unless these guys were friends that trusted each other. And that's what they are. I think that's what Joe Rogan and Jimmy Kimmel are. I think that's what Steve Bannon and Harvey Weinstein are. I think that's what Goldman Sachs and Steve Bannon are. I think that's what Goldman Sachs and Aaron Siri are. I think that's what Steve Bannon and Tony Lyons and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are. I think that's what Robert Malone and Meryl Nass are. They're very long colleagues that trust each other because they've been in the trenches for a long time, but not at a barbecue, at the frickin' fake anti-vax national security operation that makes sure that an anti-vaccine skeptic movement never exists. And that the only movement that exists is one that thinks that, bioweapons are possible, and bioweapons and bioterrorism and biowarfare, all that stuff that they were talking about endlessly right up until 9/11, that Mark Kulak has so eloquently been archiving over the last couple weeks that nobody seems to cover. And Steve Bannon was involved in that narrative control too. And so that was what my barbecue thing was, and that's why we don't know anything about population pyramids, and nobody's telling you that this signal was coming since I was in high school. That's also why we have these crazy videos where Mary Holland is on Democracy Now! Opposite Rand Paul and Paul Offit, and 10 years later, Mary Holland is on Steve Bannon's War Room opposite, the same people. And the same people are on stage arguing with each other. It's because this measles narrative is part of this measles narrative, because a military operation that is on this kind of time scale is almost invisible if all of its victims are on social media operating on a 24-hour time scale. And that's what we've missed. We have missed that if it's for all the marbles, then they would be more than willing. In fact, it would be required for them to put people in place to orchestrate a narrative so that the surfer girl who was in the National Guard could be, our director of national intelligence after being on Rogan a couple years earlier. It's just absurd unless you accept all of this stuff as random, which it can't be. It cannot be. And so that's why in 2016, I think it's very significant that when ICANN was founded and the movie Vaxxed was out and all of these people were in it, standing in front of Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark, all of those people are still with us right now. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Brian Hooker, Mary Holland, Suzanne Humphreys, James Lyons Weiler, all those clowns are the clowns that were behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and the absolutely fake, fraudulent CHD. And so they've stolen millions of dollars from people under the pretense that they're a real organization doing real stuff, but they're not. It is a national security organization that's been taking money from Americans that thought they were the Americans getting on the list. And this is all orchestrated. How am I making that argument? Because not only was Mary Holland and Rand Paul and Paul Offit on Democracy Now! In 2015 and now in front of us in 2025. In fact, they've been in front of us for the entire pandemic, opposite one another, making the same arguments, making no progress. But even Robert De Niro, who's been in a couple Weinstein movies, was a part of the vax thing, corrects himself a week later on the Today Show again. His producer corrects that, you know, it was they had a bunch of inconsistencies. And then now, again, 10 years later, we have Robert De Niro on the program with the comeback guy that was orchestrated, you know, fired for like a day or two, and everybody talked about it. And then he came back and he got more viewers than ever. And now they have 21 million subscribers on YouTube, but that's just because, you know, Donald Trump's kind of a doughhead. And guess who's the actor with them? This guy. Not by accident. It's not by accident. It's because America is being undermined by a national security theater that has spanned more than a decade. More than a decade, because in 2013 is when Joe Rogan was on the Sci-Fi Channel doing a gain-of-function virus pandemic scary show. You know, Joe Rogan questions everything with two different characters that look surprisingly like Robert Malone. In 2013. So make no mistake about it. This is the real deal. This is a real American history. What Mark and I are working on, and certainly what I'm working on, is recent American history that must be archived, can be archived by anyone, and you can experience it in real time by just looking at it. You can see it. You can do it yourself. Do the research. It is impossible that these people have made no progress. That since 2016, when he was on the Today Show saying that I'm not anti-vaccine, I want safe vaccines, that we now have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with a near miss on the White House saying exactly the same bullshit. And now having blamed Tylenol. This is more than a strikeout. It would be nice if it was a strikeout. It is a by design failure. It's a by design failure. Oh yeah, that's right. I had this here. So yeah, that's the reason why this video is so remarkable, because at the heart of this is Joe Rogan. At the heart of this is this idea that they've realized that podcasts can do it. Where TV shows couldn't, where newspapers couldn't, podcasts can really create the idea that you're thinking along, and therefore they can convince you of stuff that otherwise you'd never be convinced of. Let's play the game again. Whose voice is this? Let me get the visualizer up. Test 1 2, testing 1 2, test. Whose voice is this? Let's see if this will play. And what year again?
We need to have true, prior, free, and informed consent, which means people don't have to give a reason if they don't want to take a vaccine. You can't, in my view, force parents to vaccinate their children when it goes against not only their religious beliefs, but their scientific understanding. Why do I want to inject my child with something that's never been properly tested? As mercury had never been properly tested. Aluminum's never been properly tested. Polysorbate 80's never been properly tested. Why should I be obliged to do that and put my child at risk? No parent wants to be forced to put their child's health at risk. And that is the reality today. That is the reality.
Looking ahead, what would you say is the message people should have as we move forward and thinking about the prevalence of autism in this country and how long this has gone on?
Well, I think sadly, we have to recognize that governments, medical authorities, medical institutions, hospitals, they are conflicted. They have financial interest in this. They have potential liability for this. And so they have lied to us, and they have lied to us for decades. And this all reached a whole new level when Congress passed the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, which gave complete liability protection to industry and to the medical profession. So I think when you understand, forgive them, but they are conflicted. You don't have to listen to them anymore. And in 45 states, we have religious exemptions. If I believe it's against my religion to put my child's life on the line, as I do, you have the basis of a religious exemption. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. And I am fighting at Children's Health Defense with many others to restore religious rights in the 5 states that lack them right now. You don't have to say yes to putting your child's life and health at risk. You just don't. And you shouldn't, in my view, or it's up to you. I want to say, I support parents to do whatever they think is right. If a parent looks at the information that's out there and says, I think my child should get a measles vaccine. Well, sad to say, there is no separate measles vaccine. You have to get an MMR, measles, mumps, rubella. But if you believe that that is the best thing for you to do for your child's health, God bless you, then that is your decision. But every parent should have that right to do what they think is right for their child.
Okay, so what year do you think it is? I saw one person put 2015. You're close. Someone want to try another guess? And then I will reveal the answer. 2017. No. Actually, that recording was made yesterday. I shit you not. That's a Sherry Atkinson show, Mary Holland, 2025, September 25th. And it gets better. It gets better. Ready?
Thank you. And do you say on geoengineering or weather modification? What are your thoughts? So even to me, that just sounded crazy not all that long ago, but it's actually well documented.
It's well documented.
Where are we with that, and why does it seem to be discussed more publicly now than I've ever heard it?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think there are many things that are now being discussed more than they've been discussed in the past. And certainly, I think there is now much more of a public discussion of geoengineering than there has been. So as you point out, I mean, President Johnson back in the 60s said very openly at a public address, he who controls the weather controls the world. We used geoengineering in the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye. There's zero factual dispute about that. HARP.
Now I want you to see what this is, right? Mark Kulak points it out very well. Where are her priorities? What's her priority message here? What's her priority message at Children's Health Defense? It's religious exemptions. It's EMPs. I don't know.
NOAA are federal agencies that are engaged in monitoring the climate and engaged in geoengineering. There's no real dispute about that. There are private commercial entities that are engaged in cloud seeding. They are creating rain. We know that that's not so hard either to forestall the rain or to make the snow. Those things, we know that. But does this account in any way for some of the really severe weather issues that we're seeing right now? We're seeing in California, in Hawaii, recently in Texas, in Asheville, North Carolina. Does that help to explain these severe weather events? I don't think we really fully know, but we've got to look into this. And if our taxpayer money is actually contributing to these floods and to these outrageous fires and to the displacement and the deaths of, these poor camp children in Texas, well, we've got to uncover that. We've got to stop that. So it's interesting. A couple states have now passed legislation to try to prevent geoengineering. I'm not sure they're effective yet, to be honest with you, Tennessee and Florida, because I think the geoengineering...
Okay, so what the actual F indeed, Arthur. Now let me just queue up the thing that's coming, because I have it set up in... because I have it set up in the background in PowerPoint, it's not so easy for me to go back and forth with the arrows. So what I want you to be ready to hear is the part in the recording where Mary will very briefly ask Sherry will ask Mary to stop and let her get another one of the questions in from the script so that then Mary will continue with the point. So you can listen to this whole interview. It's on YouTube. I've already downloaded it because they're going to produce it into a show. But there's like 6 different times in this 30-minute interview where you can hear them talking about, okay, do you need any more on that? Should I say a little more? And then they're, it's kind of like, yeah, should I say a little more about that or not? Is that enough? Did you get enough? Okay. Because if I need to laugh again, let me know. It's that kind of stuff. And it's coming. One of them is coming up right now, which I found at first I was like, what did I just hear? So listen carefully.
Occurs at a higher level than the state actually may have jurisdiction over. But I think we need to be exposing this. So we at Children's Health Defense, every Sunday morning on our CHD TV platform, we have the geoengineering report. And we have Dr. Dayton Wigington, who's been sort of an expert in this area, who does something called Geoengineering Watch. We have him give a report every Sunday to our audience. And so that's one of the other major things we're looking at. We're also spending a lot of our effort looking at electromagnetic radiation again.
Okay, just a minute. Let me not leave
Sorry,
if you don't mind.
No, not at all.
We know about cloud seeding. Are there other forms of geoengineering that are possible or being done as far as you know?
Well, I'm not an expert in this area, but I do think that there are ways to shift the weather. There are absolutely ways that the government has the right to do, or the control to do, to make certain areas cooler and make certain areas hotter. And so Dr. Dane Wigington's hypothesis is that geoengineering is being used to cool down the eastern part of the United States, sort of east of the Mississippi River, where the most of the American population lives, so that they're not as concerned about this issue. But in the western states, in Nevada, Arizona, California, there are places that are really on a regular basis hitting really, really high temperatures and experiencing fires.
By us not necessarily knowing what's fully going on, at least a lot of people think we don't have all the answers, does it imply there's a secret federal project of some kind going on, or more than one project of such a secret nature?
Well, I think what we don't know about is not necessarily that it's secret, but certainly the mainstream media, the corporate media, doesn't cover these issues. So it's not a secret. The Congressional Research Service has done several reports on geoengineering. This is solar, modification, SRM, solar radiation management, is well understood by Congress as a reality that the government is putting money towards. The corporate media, for whatever reason, whether they're being told not to cover it or it's not in their interest to cover, I don't know. They don't cover it, but it's not technically a secret. I think there's a lot of things out there that are just coming to the fore now. What's actually happening, it's not fully a secret, right? Like the indemnification of the vaccine industry and doctors, it's not a secret, but the mainstream media has never covered that. The pharmaceutical industry sponsors their ads. So I do think that there's a lot going on with geoengineering, and we at Children's Health Defense, because it affects all of us, especially if they're spraying things like aluminum and strontium and barium, as we believe they are, well, that's affecting our food supply. That's affecting the fertility of the soil. That's affecting all animal and plant life. So it has a huge impact. Again, as we said, then how does that interact with fluoridated water? How does that interact with somebody who's just had an injection of aluminum? We don't really know.
And then what is your work on 5G?
Well, we have a program called Stop 5G, and we're starting a lawsuit called 704 No More. So similar to this 1986 act that indemnified the pharmaceutical industry and doctors for vaccines, in the early 1990s, Congress passed the Telecommunications Act. And Section 704 says basically localities and states cannot oppose electromagnetic radiation towers or antennas put in their district. There's federal preemption. Federal law applies. If the Federal Communications Commission said, yeah, you can go ahead, Verizon, you can go ahead, whoever, there's nothing that the local community could do. We've supported local communities in Idaho and Massachusetts and many places in the country. We always lose those cases. So we've now decided with 100
work. Shoot, sorry. I thought it would work. It didn't work. So I just want to play the last end of that. I had to put it in front of the slide in order to play the end, so I apologize for that.
Investigative look at a lot of these related topics. Consider reading my latest bestseller, Follow the Science, How Big Pharma Misleads.
Is related to your cell phone. Maybe some of those breast cancers that a friend of mine had because she was holding her phone, reading at bed at night, maybe that is related to your cell phone. The media is run by corporations essentially, and it's not in their interest to talk about the side effects, the bad effects of their products.
Okay, thank you. Great.
You're welcome.
Everything you care about, we care about here.
Well, we're so grateful to you, Cheryl, for your work.
No, I think we have so much.
Do you have enough? Do you want?
Yes, because we've
You're overfulfilled.
We have more topics that you could speak to, but I don't.
No
We're
worries.
just gonna have
Whatever works, you guys.
Do you have enough? Do you have enough there? Do you need more? Do you have enough? I'm not really sure what to say other than that's some shit right there. So, what year is this? What year? When is this? When did this happen?
With us now, Dr. Eric Feigl-Ding, Chief Epidemiologist, Public Health Chair at the New England Complex Systems Institute, former Harvard researcher. It's good to see you. Thank you very much. I thought this was an interesting, I don't know if it's a fair tease, but it was what we said.
Yes, of course, it's 2025. Does anybody know who Eric Feigl-Ding is? Do you remember who he was in 2020?
Going into your segment. Going after RFK Jr. is easy. Finding a way to prevent autism or finding the cause of autism is hard. Why are so many people taking the easy road in this fight to save children's lives?
He is reading a script. This guy was one of the worst actors on Twitter on Earth. He was a guy who was down for militant lockdowns, masking children with anything, including plastic bags. Like, this guy was nuts, and he was talking about the new variants and about how deadly they would be and about how it's about to be a disaster over and over and over again. Now, you might think, well, this is News Nation. Who's News Nation? Well, they've got Cuomo, and they've got this guy, which is a very interesting dude to have because he is clearly a fraud. He was on the extreme side of the opposite end of like the Christian Andersons and the Angela Rasmussens. This guy was farther that way, farther than she makes Leana Wen look like a reasonable woman. This guy was a Looney Tune.
Well, I think it is really tricky because we don't actually have the fundamental cause or behind all these.
And
autisms.
we need to.
We need to. And
Chief Epidemiologist and Public Health Chair of something, Dr. Eric Feigl-Ding. Now, you might think, well, this is nothing that anybody watches, but what if my friend Jay Bhattacharya was also on the same show on the same day?
For decades, Tylenol was advertised as the pain reliever hospitals used most. Today, President Trump told the world it could actually be the pain reliever taken by pregnant women that caused the massive spike in autism rates we've seen in the United States.
Don't take Tylenol. There's no downside. Don't take it. You'll be uncomfortable. It won't be as easy, maybe. But don't take it. If you're pregnant, don't take Tylenol. And don't give it to the baby after the baby is born.
Sorry if that was too loud.
Today's press conference was admittedly bold and came with the caveat you should probably check with your doctor and have discussions with them. But, and this is the important part, it was a follow-through on the President and RFK's promise to have a report on the causes of autism by the end of September. And as you know, this is personal to me. Last week, I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. I'm autistic. RFK Jr. is right to hunt for the root causes, a condition that affects millions of children.
He's autistic? Or his kid? He's autistic? You gotta be shitting me. No way. He just said that he wrote a column.
Is too important to become another political football. With us now, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, Director of the National Institutes of Health, former professor at Stanford School of Medicine. Pleasure, sir. As they say in radio, a long-time listener, first-time caller, big fan of your work for a long time. I'm not going to talk to you about the medicine part of this because I think the press conference speaks for itself. People can talk to their doctor. You can do your own research. But this issue of autism, we've gone from 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 2,000 cases when I was a young boy and diagnosed with what we now know to be the condition. Now it's 1 in 36. For boys, it's 1 in 12. Minority boys, it's even higher. It's crazy, the explosion in cases. Why has it been so hard to get, and I'll put it in air quotes, science to take this question seriously?
I mean, I think there's like a couple of things going on here. So first, whenever doctors and scientists don't understand something, especially when doctors don't understand something, we often just treat patients who have it like they don't know what they're talking about, that they don't use, that the condition's not real in some ways. And I mean, I think there's some of that. Like, there's lots of groups of marginalized patients like that. But also for autism, you know, there's a history.
That's rough, because what he should have said there was that vaccine injury is treated that way, and we have confused vaccine injury with this, you know, very blanket term autism to describe a whole host of neurological disorders that we don't know if they're related and how they're related. But we have come to call a lot of these things autism, and that's by design very, very inaccurate. And so what he should have done was said that we have to get rid of this extremely inaccurate term and start to define different manifestations of these early childhood neurological disorders and discern which of these signals are really largely genetic disorders from a single or multiple protein malfunction, and which ones are more complex disorders that could be blamed on environmental toxins that absolutely include those that are injected intramuscularly. Think about how much of a joke this man and his language are as the head of the NIH, replacing Francis Collins, a guy who was at the head of the Human Genome Project, right above Kevin McKernan. You know, that guy that's been behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Children's Health Defense for the last 5 years. That guy who's been scripting all of these people on the conservative movement behind the Steve Bannon-funded joke, from Lee Min-Yan all the way to Jessica Rose and Pierre Corey and Peter McCullough. They're all on one team. And that team was designed to sabotage any possibility of a grassroots conservative movement that just didn't accept the narrative of COVID. That's what they were there for. That's what Jay Bhattacharya was there for. Listen to what he says here and realize that this was what they were going to say all along.
History of this, people talking about vaccines being connected to autism. And of course, vaccines are a tremendously important part of what doctors have in our portfolio of things we can do to actually keep people healthy. If there is a link, no one wants to talk about it, because what if it reduces the demand for vaccines that would keep people healthy? I think those two things have made it so that it's so hard to get an honest conversation, because I'm pretty sure that it's probably not going to be vaccines as the cause, but by saying that, I'm acting as if I already know for a fact. In fact, I don't know why the rise in autism has happened. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. If you asked me to pin down one thing, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
It seems as though when we're watching coverage, and I don't like saying this, but I predicted this last week. I predicted it in my op-ed. When this report came out, there was going to be far more anger about what might be the causes and saying it's wrong than in the important work to find out what is. This is just some of the doctors from today. Take a listen.
I think it is pretty solid that there is no association with acetaminophen or Tylenol given in pregnancy and autism. This was a dangerously irresponsible thing for President Trump to say when he said, tough it out, because that only puts children at higher risk, especially with fever in the first trimester.
I'm very worried. And who was that? Who was that? That was Paul Offit. The guy who was on Democracy Now! Opposite Mary Holland literally 10 years ago, also with Rand Paul, about measles. Do you see? It is a national security script that spans over more than a decade. That's why we can't see it. And that's why social media is the opposite time frame, the opposite time horizon. It's 24 hours instead of 25 years.
That if we take away the one last option based on really junk science, when there's not evidence to do this, we're going to end up causing more harm than good.
We can't just do this willy-nilly. We have to be serious about it. And frankly, there is no link when you look at the best evidence.
I have to give this thing a little chance here. Every once in a while,
what my mother used to say to me sometimes.
Some trouble here.
For decades, Tylenol was advertised as the pain reliever hospitals used most. Today, I'm autistic. RFK.
A couple of things going on here. So first, whenever doctors and scientists don't understand something, especially when doctors don't understand something,
It seems as though when we're watching coverage, and I don't like saying this, but I predicted this last week. I predicted it in my op-ed. When this report came out, there was going to be far more anger about what might be the causes and saying it's wrong than in the important work to find out what is. This is just some of the doctors from today. Take a listen.
I think it is pretty solid that there is no association with acetaminophen or Tylenol given in pregnancy and autism. This was a dangerously irresponsible thing for President Trump to say when he said, tough it out, because that only puts children at higher risk, especially with fever in the first trimester.
I'm very worried that if we take away the one last option based on really junk science, when there's not evidence to do this, we're going to end up causing more harm than good.
We can't just do this willy-nilly. We have to be serious about it. And frankly, there is no link when you look at the best evidence.
What I am more worried about when I hear that is what my mother used to say to me sometimes, seldom right but never in doubt, in that it reminds me of what we heard about COVID. If you get the vaccine, you cannot get COVID. We are positive. And if you say anything else, you must be wearing a tin hat. You remember, because people did that to you. Why is this now the same thing about any discussion of causes of autism?
I mean, I think, like you just heard it here on those clips, right? They've read the literature, I guess, and they've decided, they made up their minds. I've read the literature also. The dean of the Harvard School of Medicine agrees with me that there is an association. Now, do I know for certain that it's a cause? I don't know, but I agree with President Trump. If you can avoid taking Tylenol in pregnancy, then it's wise to try to avoid it, right? It's just, actually it's true for any medicine. You want to be careful with any medicine, but especially when there's a potential link to something you don't want for your child later on, and if it's a low-grade fever, you can manage without it, then try.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone.
Yeah, get on the app. Get on their app, right? Because you won't have to log in or, give any of your stuff or pay or anything like that. It'll be just like PeerTube. Not. Okay, so next video.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy
Yes,
Goodman.
this is
with Ben
recent.
Gonzalez. We turn now to the subject of autism and false claims about the causes of autism made by President Trump and Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at a news conference at the White House on Monday. President Trump, without evidence, linked autism to vaccines and said the combination MMR vaccine should be broken up into separate shots for measles, mumps, and rubella. But
I don't think he blamed it on vaccines. It's so bizarre that she opened with that. The announcement was about, that's already distorting. Wow, that's impressive.
He couldn't remember the word rubella. Trump also recommended removing aluminum from vaccines and said parents should wait until their children are 12 to vaccinate against hepatitis B, falsely stating it's only transmitted sexually.
The movie Vax 2 actually has a kid that was vaccinated when he was 12, carrying around some kind of ventilator and has a tube in his throat. Trump said you should wait until you're 12 to get vaccinated against hepatitis B. Just working those Merck products.
Which isn't true. So saying infants shouldn't have the Hep B shot, they should wait, when in fact it is transmitted through breast milk, in utero, and in the home. Trump
Wow,
also
and in the home. Wow, Hep B can also be transmitted in the home.
Stop lying!
Damn, that is some nasty shit.
That the common painkiller, acetaminophen, brand name Tylenol, causes autism in children if taken during pregnancy.
First, effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased.
See how easy it is to use the performance on stage to aggravate one side and then selectively excite or maybe deliver some kind of semi-disappointment to the other side, and then they can rinse and repeat it if everybody's in. If everybody's scripted. That's exactly why all those people who came to the rescue of Jimmy Kimmel did it exactly the way that they did it and exactly the way that it was done. It's no different. It's exactly the same trick.
Risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good.
The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists called President Trump's remarks about Tylenol irresponsible, adding it's highly unsettling that our federal health agencies are willing to make an announcement that will affect the health and well-being of millions of people without the backing of reliable data. Dr. Helen Tager-Flusberg, founder of the Coalition of Autism Scientists, said, quote, when the President of the United States makes claims like this...
The Foundation of Autism Scientists.
We know that many parents will be listening, and the impact may be truly devastating, unquote. For more, we're joined by Dr. Peter Hotez, Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine in Texas, where he's also co-director of the Texas Children's Center for Vaccine Development.
This guy was on Charlie Rose with Jeffrey Sachs like more than a decade ago, also not by accident. Jeffrey Sachs might, I don't know, he could still show up on the political scene on the left. Never mind, I mean, this is all a script. It's all a long game. That's the trick. You got to know the movie The Sting, for example, one of the best movies of all time. It's a long con. It's a long con. Mary Holland is a long con. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a long con. He may be the victim of a long con. But Donald Trump is not the victim of a long con. He is one of the actors in a long con. Just like Hillary Clinton is an actor in a long con. These people know. Jimmy Kimmel is an actor in a long con. Joe Rogan is an actor in a long con. A lot of them are improvisational actors as specialists. That means that they can be given a script, but then improvise within it. Those are the best kind of actors for a national security long-term script that needs to be adjusted depending on what kind of people you come against. That's the role that this guy plays. Know it or not, that's him. Just like Fauci, just like Collins, just like McKernan, just like Malone. They're all national security actors on a need-to-know basis.
He's the author of several books, including Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, My Journey as a Vaccine Scientist, Pediatrician, and Autism Dad, and his new book, co-authored with Dr. Michael Mann, Science Under Siege, How to Fight the 5 Most Powerful Forces That Threaten Our World. Dr. Hotez, welcome back to Democracy Now! I want to reiterate that point that you are the father of an autistic daughter, as well as a scientist. If you can talk about this moment with President Trump stating one unproven fact after another, and talk about Tylenol, what we know and what we don't know.
Yeah, Amy, it was 15, 20 minutes of complete fact-free news conference. I think, the best way to approach this is to go back to first principles and understand what is autism and how does it come about. We've learned so much about autism, and I wrote about it in the book, which, by the way, came out. I wrote that book, Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, after a year of conversations with Mr. Kennedy.
After a year of conversations with Mr. Kennedy, he wrote a book? Did you know that? Did you know that he could claim that he worked with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on his book about autism? Did you know that? Because this is the end. They are about to be discredited. Just like you heard Mary Holland should be discredited. Just like Steve, they're all going to be discredited as frauds. Can you imagine the worst case scenario is that they reveal to you that the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania was actually a staged publicity stunt and that Donald Trump is a complete fraud who was elected only because of that fraud? What would happen to the American populace? How would the American populace judge those people who stuck with the health freedom movement until the end? I don't think that's going to happen, but just imagine, because something very similar to that is going to happen when the health freedom movement becomes basically discredited in the vast majority of the minds of Americans, because right now we're very close. It is not 50-50. Please understand, the election near misses are an illusion, that they want you to believe that the country is very finely divided right down the middle, so that you both sides stand on their, really believe that they can be right, when in reality it's really like 80-20. And it's by design. It's social media that makes us believe that the truth is getting out, because we are in a bubble. You are in a bubble. It's a trap. And outside of the trap are a majority of Americans that think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. discredited himself already years ago when he left a bear and a bicycle in Central Park, discredited himself years ago as an addict, that Donald Trump discredited himself years ago as an actor and a philanderer and a fraud. And it is by design that Donald Trump has been used to drive some people to a point of not being able to think, but that's also not a majority of people on that side. But the truth is not getting out, ladies and gentlemen. It's not getting out at all, and the trap is closing fast. We need to get out, and more importantly, we need to get out by actively declaring who it was that got us in there, so that our family and friends will forgive us for this mistake. And you need to figure it out. They need forgiveness. We need forgiveness, because the whole operation caught us all. If you think that this guy is right, you're caught. If you think that Fauci was always right, you're caught. If you think that Daszak was a liar, you're caught. If you think, Ralph Barrick did it, you're caught. If you think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was trying but failed, you're caught. It's all one big show.
That was the product of that. And then we followed up this in the brand new book, Science Under Siege, with Michael Mann. But we know a lot about autism now. Autism occurs through the action of more than 100 different autism genes.
Now, there are more than 100 different autism genes. I want you to think about that very semantically distorted enchantment. Autism genes. Do those genes code for proteins? Do they code for specific steps or changes in the trajectory of the pattern integrity? What do those genes code for? What do they code for in regular intelligence? So why would you call them autism genes? Well, you call them autism genes because they did genome-wide association studies in these children, and they found deviations from what is considered to be the healthy human genome template generated by the Human Genome Project, and then have scanned for more impressive deviations from it, more or less, called those autism genes, and then gotten very unsophisticated biologists like this guy to go around claiming that he knows all about them. And that has bamboozled another thousands and thousands and maybe even hundreds of thousands of doctors around the world to believe in that, because the central dogma, DNA is translated to RNA, translated to protein, is real. Evolution is real because of the central dogma. And these people are telling you that the central dogma and its working mechanism, genes, over 100 of them, are responsible for autism. And people like James Lyons Weiler behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. believe that. People like Jay Bhattacharya are on that script as well, because that is the national security script.
So that's why we call it an autism spectrum, not just autism, because it's 100 different conditions of varying degrees of neurologic activity. All of these genes are involved in early fetal brain development. So we can explain the vast amount of autism just simply through the understanding the genetics and understanding how these genes operate.
In theory, we can understand autism if we looked at the function of all these genes and how they interact with all the genes that we don't directly associate with autism across time during the development and maintenance of the neurological circuitry of a young developing human. See how stupid it sounds once you try to add words that make meaning from it? It's just like crazy. We can understand autism by the collective action of 100 genes?
Right. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no environmental exposures or triggers, but it's operating through influencing autism genes early on in fetal brain development. The best example we know of a teratogen or something that will affect autism genes that will give an autism phenotype is a medication called Depakote, otherwise known as valproic acid, which they didn't talk about at all. So if you're pregnant and not aware of it, and on that anti-seizure medication called valproic acid, valproate or Depakote, it'll interact with autism genes and give you and more likely than not could give you an autism phenotype. That looks pretty strong, and there are about half a dozen other chemical exposures that may do the same thing. And certainly not vaccines, because again, these are all events happening in early fetal brain development. So it's not just the massive evidence showing there's no link between MMR or thimerosal or alum or all the other things they say in autism, because it's happening in pregnancy. So there's no plausibility. But then let's get to Tylenol. Now, if of the half a dozen chemical exposures that look pretty strongly linked to autism and interacting with autism genes, Tylenol right now is not really on that list, because about a year ago there was a very large study done out of the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, and this is one of the top research institutes in universities in Europe, and it showed.
Now, I want to be sure that I mention this because I didn't let the Eric Feigl-Ding clip play, but Eric Feigl-Ding cites the same papers that Peter Hotez is citing because they're all on the same script.
Pretty clearly among those 2 million people enrolled in the study that there was no link between Tylenol and autism. There was a follow-up study of what's called a meta-analysis or a systematic review, where the study found some studies could show a link, others don't. Certainly worth following up on, not as high a priority from my point of view as the others, higher priority ones on the list. And if they held a news conference to say, look, we are interested in autism, we do think this is important for the health of the American people, we're going to convene the experts. We're going to convene some of the best neuroscientists, genetics experts, environmental health scientists, and bring them together to really pin down that complex interplay between autism genes and the handful of environmental exposures we know about. Further down the list, we may also look at Tylenol. Fair enough. I think nobody would argue with that. But instead what we got was, I called it fact-free, this specific laser focus on Tylenol, which doesn't make sense. And then the last thing I'll say is, again, the way they talk about autism in this such sort of baby terms and this very simplistic idea that we're going to find the cause of autism or the cure for autism, it rings hollow, because we know this complex interplay between autism genes, maybe some environmental exposures early on in pregnancy. It's like talking about any other complex condition. We wouldn't say, for instance, we're going to find the cause of cancer, the cure of cancer. Nobody would accept that, because we know it's a complex interplay between oncogenes and the environment. So it was certainly an exercise in frustration for those of us in the scientific community.
Dr. Hotez, I wanted to ask you, how much of the rising rates in autism are the result of increased testing or recognition of the condition, and how much do you feel are real?
So that's a really important question, and it's a fair question to look at in more detail. Clearly, we've shifted how we diagnose autism. We used to call it autism, now we call it autism spectrum disorder. And
is it impossible for anybody in the last 10 years to have been able to say it succinctly that I don't like using the word autism to describe vaccine injury. I don't think it's the right word. Has anybody done that? Has anybody tried? No, because he's actually saying you can't, because there are autism genes and then there are environmental exposures that might trigger it. And so you can't separate the environment from the genes. It's a complex interplay, yada, 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 but it's mostly genes. It's a genetic thing. It's a genetic thing. It's a genetic thing. And some people apparently can just have all the vaccines they want and they won't get hurt. And other people are vulnerable. And every time they get injected, I guess it's a dice roll for them. You see the problem with that? It goes right directly to personalized medicine, the thing that the National Institutes of Health and the Human Genome Project has been talking about from the beginning, that vaccines or any medicine for that matter can't be appropriate for everybody because everybody is a different genetic puzzle. A small subset of people might develop some kind of syndrome if they take aspirin when they're young. Other people won't. And so let's just tell everybody that aspirin is poison and Tylenol is not. Some people might develop autism after, I don't know, a complex exposure to environmental toxins, but not an exposure that has to do with injection. That's not exposure. That's not what he means. And these kinds of consistent inaccuracies, these kinds of consistent lack of continued clarification. You know, if somebody was standing behind a camera and saying that they're focusing and they're trying to get it in, just hold still for one more minute, and they keep saying, okay, hold on 1 second, can you stand back a little bit, can you step forward a little bit, and they never take the picture, you might think that they're not a very good photographer. And if somebody for the last 10 years has been arguing with somebody like Mary Holland and they still haven't made any progress, just like Mary Holland has been arguing with Paul Offit and Peter Hotez for the last 10 years and she hasn't made any progress either, it can't be by accident. It has to be a militarily coordinated, long-term psychological operation on us. We are being bamboozled by our own government and actors employed by them. That's why Robert Malone is behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's why Meryl Nass is behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's why Mary Holland and not Tony Bark and not Brandy Vaughn are behind the health freedom movement. Because Brian Hooker, former transformer and transfector of plants, is part of the fake health freedom movement. You know that guy on that? They all have autistic kids or they're autistic themselves, so you can't argue with them, but autism is a myth.
And you have this whole very interesting discussion about neurodiversity that brings in a lot of bioethics issues. So starting in around the early 2000s, the American Academy of Pediatrics started asking pediatricians and recommended pediatricians to do autism screening between the first and second year of life. And guess what? The numbers went up. We also got better at diagnosing autism in girls and women. We used to say it was 10 to 1.
When did they start doing it? In the 2000s? You mean right when the Human Genome Project was announced done? Autism screening. Genetic testing of children.
Boys to girls. Now the proportion's roughly 3 to 1. But as we get better in diagnosing autism in girls and women, because girls and women tend to camouflage their autism better, we often diagnose their comorbidities such as OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, or some of the eating disorders. It may even get closer to parity. We've also reached underserved schools in a better way. So we're diagnosing autism in the underrepresented minority community better. So all of that feeds into the likely explanation accounting for the steep rise in autism cases. Now, I do think there is an environmental component, and I remember having that conversation with Mr. Kennedy years ago. I'd say, look, Bobby, I can identify half a dozen chemical exposures like valproate. You're an environmental attorney. Hey, this is your sweet spot, man. You should be all over this and really look into it. At the time, he had zero interest. Now, he comes along, years later and talks about Tylenol, which, again, is not what the science is telling us. So I do think there could be an environmental component to that as well. It should be looked into. but certainly not with the kind of rhetoric and the approach that this administration is proposing.
Let's go to Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. recommending the use of leucovorin, claiming it improves verbal communication when given to children on the spectrum.
We have also identified an exciting therapy that may benefit large numbers of children who suffer from autism. Peer-reviewed literature has documented that up to 60% of folate-deficient children with ASD can have improved verbal communications if given leucovorin. I have instructed NIH, FDA, and CMS to help.
Think about how magic that is. So they have to define what a folate-deficient child is, and then they give it to the children that they define as folate-deficient autistic kids. That's already a sandwich of assumptions that is like, yeah, wow.
Doctors who treat children appropriately. Jay will help tell that story, which started with sound science, the kind that restores faith in government.
So that's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a man you know well. You spent a year talking to him. Your book about your daughter on the spectrum, Rachel.
I spent a year working for him. You could talk to me, too, about how he's a fraud. Anyone
comes
could.
Out of that. Explain what this is and what he's saying, and what does anecdotal versus evidence-based medicine mean?
So again, this is getting back to that first principle and why we started out this way, 100 different autism genes. There are many different phenotypes. There are various subsets of kids and adults on the autism spectrum who have what are called autoantibodies to different components of their body. Some have antibodies to what are called glycosphingolipids, which is a type of a glycolipid. Others have autoantibodies to different membrane proteins. Some have what are called ANA antibodies, which you can also, anti-nuclear antibodies that you can find in lupus. And there is a subset that seems to have antibodies against folate receptor, which is a metabolite used for the synthesis of purines and pyrimidines in DNA. And perhaps for that subset of kids and adults, there could be some benefit for giving leucovorin, and there are even some studies to support that. And that's the way it needs to be framed. But again, it's always spoken about in these baby terms, right? Tylenol is the cause of autism. It's ridiculous. Or now leucovorin is going to come to be used as a major treatment. Again, what we need is better understanding, better precision medicine to really focus on the subgroup of kids and adults who may benefit from leucovorin.
And Dr. Holtes, in a broader sense, this war on science that the Trump administration has unleashed, all the cutbacks in research and the reductions of university research capacities, the doctors, many researchers fleeing to Canada or to Europe or Asia to be able to continue to conduct their research. What's the impact on the United States of this war?
Well, first of all, let's look at why this is happening. Mr. Kennedy and this new version of Health and Human Services is very tied in with the wellness and influencer industry, in which a lot of it is built up whatever they can buy in bulk and jack up the price and then sell with $1,600 telehealth visits. I mean, have you ever wondered why they're all anti-parasitic drugs, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fenbendazole, as we report in the book? It's because they're cheap, available in bulk. You can jack up the price and sell it with a $1,600 telehealth visit. But it also involves attacking mainstream science. That's why, the
crazy thing is the no virus people are doing it, just like the IMA is doing it, just like America's frontline doctors are doing it. They're all doing the telehealth and supplements thing. Can you believe it? It's almost like it was a script. It's almost like they were briefed and they knew the destination that they were supposed to take us. It's almost like he's the opposite side of the same script. It's like one Lollapalooza of liars, isn't it?
They attack vaccines, and that's why you heard Mr. Kennedy during our terrible measles epidemic that began in West Texas. he says, well, yes, you can get the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, or you can get this cocktail of supplements, budesonide and vitamin A and clarithromycin. You're scratching your head and say, where the heck does that come from? That's his pivot to the health and wellness and influencer industry. But part of that, tragically, is for the health and wellness influencer industry to sell their snake oil, they have to attack mainstream science. And the scientists then portray people like myself as cartoon villains or public enemies. And that means attacking the academic health centers. And they falsely allege that they're tied up with pharma companies and that sort of thing. And that's where the NIH funding cuts come. It's all to benefit. That's what the MAHA movement is. It's basically an economic stimulus plan for the health and wellness and influencer industry. And it's very damaging. And it's particularly tough for our young scientists who are just starting out. They're sometimes I feel like they look at me in the desert, look at me like Moses in the desert. Why did you bring us here? And you have to, find paths of light to carve through this, because it has made things very complicated. I still think you can, as we talk about in the book, Science Under Siege, where there's urgency, but there's also agency. I do think we can find a path of light through this darkness, but it's certainly gotten more complicated.
We just have 30 seconds, Dr. Hotez, but I wanted to go back to this point where Trump says to pregnant people, just tough it out if your temperature spikes. What is the absolutely damaging message here when people who are pregnant are told that if their temperature spikes, this can damage the fetus? Tough it out, don't take Tylenol?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm not an obstetrician, but if talking to my obstetrics colleagues, one of the things that they're aware of is that just like certain harmful drugs, such as Depakote, has a harmful effect on the fetus, fever itself, or some of the viruses that can cause the fever, can have a harmful effect on the fetus. And so there may be a real downside from not taking Tylenol, because we don't have a lot of options for pregnant women. The obstetricians tend to avoid using aspirin or ibuprofen, so there's not a lot of choice out there. So to come out and just push Tylenol when the evidence for it is not there is completely reckless on my part, and I don't understand why the administration chose to do that.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.
I am going to I'm going to go to the gym, and so I will pick up where I left off here later this evening. I know I make that promise a lot, but it's Friday. It's nice outside. I do think it's going to be possible. I'll get back around 4:30, so maybe I'll be on around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the third installment of the Twilight Zone. In the meantime, I will play you out with music, and then I will see you again in a few hours. I'm going to start with the first song that I ever used in this context. I started putting music to the stream with this song right here, which I really, really like a lot. And it's kind of appropriate to go to the gym.
I get up
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. See you again in a few hours. Thank you, thank you, thank you.